Welcome to If I Did It, a show where we analyze and solve PR kerfuffles from the MMA world and beyond. I'm your host,
Float,
Alexi Old,
float on.
and joining us as always is King Native Bloody Elbow, and
back to
providing
King.
the background sound effects and the foreground effects.
Yeah, we'll turn those off in a second.
Eugene S. Robinson from Aussie.com and author of Fight Everything Everyone Know About Asking. I'm afraid to get your ass kicked for asking.
Don't forget a long slow screw.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Or the inimitable sounds of love, a threesome in 4 acts.
Yes.
There you go.
And host of a formidable E-button yesterday that we'll get into.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, Eugene.
Sir!
You are UFC honcho Dana White.
Mm.
You reinstated Ariel Helwani's press credentials, but told the world that it ain't over by blasting him on the UFC Unfiltered podcast for revealing the Brock Lesnar UFC 200 news. Quote, it left a whole lot of people pointing the finger at each other, almost blew up a relationship, and created a lot of bad blood behind the scenes. And he didn't care. It was all about him. When you go that way with me, I'm hard to get back. End quote. We can't take a page from the beef squashing playbook and call Minister Farrakhan to mediate, given obvious cultural and religious difficulties.
Oh, man. Fuck it. This is great. Alexi, his ass is flying so close to the sun right now. He's like Icarus. This is... Go ahead.
So who you going to call?
You iron it right out.
Okay, go ahead, finish.
So who you going to call to stop the verbal violence, since we're all in the same gang?
The thing is, Machiavelli said it best, or I'm going to paraphrase here. Friends come and go, but enemies are enemies forever. Now, I had 2 friends recently. One guy screwed over the other guy about, 6 years ago, right? And this guy just waited and waited and waited, and now he's begun a campaign of very passive-aggressive harassment, but there's no end in sight. Now, the guy who was the guy who was the initial transgressor, who now has revenge come back up on him, sends him an off-channel email saying, "Please, can you stop this? It's just a matter of mutual respect," which of course set off the first aggrieved party. I mean, we're completely balkanized. Set off, and he goes, this guy is going to give me a lecture about respect, and he dug in deeper. Why do you think things went the way they did in the Balkans, with guys showing up at the doors of other guys and shooting them for stuff that their great-great-grandfathers did? This is a weird kind of tribalism. It's not geographical, man. It's genetic, And if you think that, you flew close to the sun with the whole tribal thing, I'm gonna drill down and say it's genetic. I mean, you gotta know he's that type of guy. You gotta know he's that type of guy. When I start out a jiu-jitsu competition, sometimes if I'm fighting and I'm in a position to do so, I do what I call an early life fuck-up test. So, you're jockeying for position, and I'll get my hand on the face of the guy, and I'll push his face, right? And a guy who's had bad early life experiences with maybe a father figure loses his mind at this point, I'll give you another example. My guitar player comes out of a bar, and there's a guy sitting on the sidewalk. Some drunk looks up at him and says to my guitar player, 100% pure faggot. And at the time that my guitar player told me this story, I go, what did you say? And he goes, I just laughed. The guy's an idiot. And I was like, oh, what a refreshingly different response to what I would have done. I would have recreated the opening scene from A Clockwork Orange, and Dana White is cut from the same fucking cloth. I told you before, and I'll tell you again, Helwani had to know it was a flyer he took, and he had to take it. It saved his ass, but he made himself an enemy forever. And if you read between the lines of what the Bald one said, he feels betrayed. He feels betrayed. So now he's got a misplaced sense of not even a misplaced. He's got maybe in his mind a completely justifiable sense of this guy transgressed again. Look what I did for this guy, right, and this is how he repaid me.
What's so funny is it reminds me of, in wake of all this, I was watching old school hip hop diss and beef tracks. Yep. And the one that really stood out, like no Vaseline, Ice Cube, like one of the greatest of all time.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of pure visceral hatred that reaches beyond the screen, and especially the speaker, Tupac's hit him up against Biggie.
Yep.
And it's the same thing you're mentioning in the sense he's like, I did this for you, did that for you, and this is how you respond, this is how you treat me. And then you hear it build up, build up, build up, and he's saying like, I shouldn't even be on this track, you're not on my level, but he can't help himself but get on it. And at the very end, he goes from rapping quite skillfully to shouting about, I'm going to murder you, I'm going to murder your kids. And I remember at the time listening to it, like in New York, I was like,
yeah, it was just crazy. Like,
and you get the same response, like this guy. Like, how could you, if you're in that Biggie camp or Bad Boy Records, how could you not escalate things, right, or get prepared for an escalation or war when you have? I mean, if you guys haven't listened to it,
but you know what I
same kind of dynamic.
What I always go the grizzly bear route. You know how grizzly bears attack. You know, I'm foraging. Hey, buddy, I'm eating berries. Ooh, these berries are good. Oh, there's a family of 4 people. How interesting. I'm eating berries. Boom! And then they're on you. You know, so, I mean, you know, I think the bald one lacks a certain amount of subtlety and grace, but you got to understand that the people who are in the fight world are in the fight world for Jesus Christ. People who are in the fight world are in the fight world for a very specific reason. I'm being attacked by Brazilians.
This is how Brazilians operate.
Sexual assault.
So what do you think? What do you think, Nate?
Well, I think the Tupac Biggie reference is apt because
somebody's gonna get hurt.
That's where the road goes down, and it's not a pretty road. And
East
I
Coast,
think,
West Coast too.
Yeah, and not that there's any beef coming back from the Ariel direction. I mean, Ariel's a reporter. He's a nice kid. He's not. But Dana has bodyguards, and he has goons around him. And the story, which I don't know anything about, that nobody else knows about, all I know is the public stuff. But the story about people putting hands on Ariel is very concerning to me because the UFC could completely destroy themselves if they were to unleash the goons on a reporter, like somebody from a major publication especially, but any reporter. And that's something I could easily see happening. I mean, you know, you look at Beckett, who's going to get rid of this meddlesome prince, you know. The king never said, go out and kill Beckett. He just said, who's going to, you know, this guy's really pissing me off. And you got a bunch of dumb, violent people around you. Ideas start spinning in little heads, and that, I think, is the thing they really need to avoid. Like they need to de-escalate, not escalate.
Well, it's funny you say that because that's what happens with, you know, my arts and entertainment background personally and also professionally. You see situations where when incidents occur, it's like you said, Nate, you have hangers-on or people who, worse than that, people who identify with a certain brand or rapper or product, like, wait a second, if this person who I identify with is emasculated, I'm emasculated. And they're here, and and so I have to show my value to them, and this is how I'm going to do it. And you're right, it's situations where it's not necessarily people saying, take this guy out. It's just that I like Dana, and I like the UFC, and I don't like what's going on, and I want to, wouldn't life be easier? And so stuff happens, and sometimes it comes back to the people that it's done in the name of.
Hey,
like,
man, you don't even have to go very far. You might be talking to somebody who thinks that way.
Oh.
Why this show is
life, what's time for life? You got I can't even get the fingers down.
I mean, just imagine how poor Donald Trump feels when one of his fans gets carried away and starts beating and kicking a protester like happened in Arizona yesterday. And it's always black guys, Eugene. Have you noticed how many Trump supporters that turn violent are black? I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's you know what.
Our teachable moment.
Well, you know, there was at one point in my past history. Well, how about this? There was a friend of mine who was tarrying with these high-level steroid dealers, who, as it turns out, were creating a super high-level, successful counterfeit. You know, people got, it was for AD 50, Anadrol 50. You know, it had the stamp on it. On the pills were etched the AD 50. You know, it looked legit. $5,000 later, people are ripped off. They're angry. And the guy who perpetrated the The guy, this is funny. That's what I gotta
Who are you
put it with.
confronting here?
This is Sorrel. Yeah. So this guy who perpetrated the fraud, he's like, I said, you go back to that guy, you get our money. My friend said, you go back to that guy, you get that money. And he said, I'm not going to do that. He was sufficiently afraid of this guy. He goes, I'm not going to do that. And so this friend of mine said to him, you tell that guy I'm going to find him. And my friend said this, and I'm going to cut off his penis and put it in his mouth. And then my friend goes, you don't want to say that. I told you to tell him that. I mean, my friend told him, I told you to tell him that. And so then phone gets hung up. This is in the days before cell phones. And then my friend thinks, man, that's got to be the single stupidest thing, that I've ever done. Because in reality, when you get guys who are like that, who think like that, and that whole satellite of guys around them, they're not playing. They're not playing. $4.1 billion means not playing.
And that's why
$400 million means I'm not fucking playing. It's not junior high school, not playing.
And $2. So, but I think going back to the Black Trump thing, I think what happens is
had a Black Trump.
Individuals who are there, who are supporters of Donald Trump, I think their mere presence, my assumption is, their mere presence at these kinds of rallies raises questions by the standard Trump followers. Like, what is this guy doing? Is this a Black Lives Matter dude? And so there's this heightened sense. Yes, and you see this over and over. And it transcends race, it transcends gender, it transcends economics. You have somebody that is not like the old song. One of these things is not like the other, and they have to overcompensate and prove their value and worth. So.
But the Nazis had a great phrase for it, and I brought it up before, and it works perfectly in this instance: freedom of the streets.
They still use that phrase in Indonesia today.
Yeah. Oh, do they? Freedom of the streets.
Yeah.
Man.
If you watch the The Look of Silence and the Act of Killing.
Yeah, right. That's right. All right, yeah.
So one thing that, in terms of the streets and not letting the streets handle it, King Nate, you are the UFC. On Tuesday, MMA Junkie obtained an internal email allegedly sent to all your employees, which stated, quote, a report today by flowcombat.com indicating the company has been sold is false. This follows other false speculation in the press recently. We have instructed our attorneys to investigate and take all appropriate legal actions against the parties publishing and contributing to these false stories, end quote. Explain the PR behind this email.
It's virtually impossible to explain the PR because it's terrible PR. They're committing themselves to stating true, false things that quite possibly are true. And so I don't really know what you do with this. When you've got somebody that's doubling down, that's insisting on one version of a story, and then their story keeps changing, and you suspect that the story is going to dramatically change shortly, I just don't know what to tell you. The first thing I learned doing big-time corporate public affairs, and I was just a flunky. This is when I was doing the clips, coming in at 5 in the morning, and Paul Begala tells me, "You're the backbone of the organization." Yeah, right. But but the first thing you learn is don't do any of the cheap, underhanded Karl Rove bullshit you've heard about. Be above board. Be as honest as you can be. Lying creates problems, and so if they're telling the truth, great. I guess that's a reasonable response, maybe. It seems like overkill to me. If it's not true, just let Flow Combat hang out there and look stupid when it never comes to pass. So I don't see any point in what they're doing except to make themselves look bad in retrospect when the story comes out. I don't know. Eugene, you disagree? You've got more of an insight into the totalitarian mindset than I do.
This guy, not even 15 minutes ago, there's a guy who sat on the other side of the desk where I'm sitting, and he said he works for a huge biotech company. He has an all-hands meeting.
The one Theranos or whatever that went from
Theranos. No, that's one of my favorite stories of the year. She goes from billions of dollars to a net worth of zero. How does it feel? You can share the refrigerator box next to me, Anyway, he said his CEO called an all-hands meeting. The CEO said, I know you guys in Financial Times, been reading Wall Street Journal. The rumors of our sale are greatly exaggerated. Now, keep in mind, he didn't deny. Well, you know, maybe.
It's called
There's actually,
wiggle room. Wiggle room.
Right.
Rumors are greatly exaggerated. That's different than saying
Or
these
don't
are
talk to the
words
press,
of
or we
Paul.
respect, you know.
but you gotta let me finish. So this guy, he makes a claim it was him who did it. Of course, I don't know if it was the case. Somebody raises their hand and says, "So it's not true. We're about to be sold." He goes, "It is not true." 2 weeks later, sold. You know. And he said, okay, now why did he do that? Is the guy a liar? Is he a sociopath? Maybe he's all of these things, but the reality of it is, like if you watch the Facebook Live I did on Ozzy yesterday with the Goldman Sachs guy about the sale, you know, it's perceived worth and value, and if 2 weeks prior to any completion of sale and all the due diligence and all the shit that has to get signed when you sell something for $4.1 billion, you know, if two weeks out, your people who are not getting good deals cut for them start leaving. You know, then you've got yourself a problem. You've got a problem, and it is not out of the question that people can't renegotiate stuff. So they've got. I mean, it's like at one point, at one point somebody asked a friend of mine about something that was aggressively illegal. He just came out and asked him. He said, "John, did you do this thing?" And John looked at him and said, "I did not." The guy who asked knew he was lying. John knew he was lying. John knew the guy knew he was lying. But the reality of it was, only a fool admits to stuff that will not benefit them later. You know, in a public forum. So the bald one comes out and says, you know, he's not sending a message to us. He's not sending a message to he's sending a message to people in the organization. I need you to hold it down, you know, and I will be looking for the leaks. And 2 weeks from now, you may not be part of this deal, but you may be out of a job. So right. I think it was not for public. He knew it would be publicly consumed, but the reality of it is, I think it was to have the reign of terror continue inside, and that's where they've been since the Helwani deal.
And that's
he's not talking to us. He's talking to people whose paychecks say Zuffa.
Well, there are a couple of things with this. One is like when he's engaged. Is that for me or for the
paychecks? This is Mr. Rao who's sitting here mocking us.
I heard Zuffa paychecks can show up in your pay packet just unannounced.
Hey, I guarantee you, man, if I start getting checks from Zuffa, you'll know right away. Eugene, what's that fur coat? Oh, this little thing.
And then also like when Mr. White, who?
Yeah.
Mr. White. You mean the bald one? So
the man is a good, decent man.
I'm shaving my head in solidarity. So here's the thing.
And after I win MMA Journalist of the Year 6 times in a row.
So I think it's like there are a couple of things. One is, as a general policy, or whether or not they care internally that emails will be leaked and go outside of the organization. That's just one thing, and maybe they don't. All right. The other thing is you're mentioning who is it for, and I agree. I think that to a certain, there's some internal emails at times that are really for the outside world, and there are others that are to create a chilling effect inside. And the funny thing is about the inside emails is, and lying, some people have the perspective. Some clients of mine in the past have the perspective like, you know what? The people who know, and the people who don't know, they don't give a fuck.
Yep.
You know? So if you are important enough to know officially, and either you will be taken care of, or there's an illusion that you'll be taken care of, or uncertainty, if you will. But if you know what's really going on, it's not for you. This is for the peons. This is shut the peons up. And for the peons who you know are going to run their mouths to their spouses and to their kids, to their friends, because I work at the UFC, and let me tell you, I got insider information, right? So it's for that. So again, I'm not suggesting that a calculus was made internally before the email went out. Like, okay, get ready, this thing could hit, could go outside, or whether or not the answer to that was like, I don't give a fuck, right? We don't know. But the fact of the matter is, in lying situations, you have people that know, that don't know, and it truly reflects the pecking order. So,
and also you create a causus. I don't know what the Latin word would be, but you've built into it. If somehow the deal doesn't go through, you could turn around and blame who?
Internal leakers.
Yeah, make it whichever. I'm not buying this. Whatever. All right. Okay, I got you. So.
So in terms of money and fur coats
Yes.
and living large, Eugene, you
Eugene's
plan
steak and
to be the
champagne
next.
only.
You plan to be the next new owner of the UFC.
Mm.
What are your PR plans for handling outstanding issues ranging from the Ali Act, fighter pay, and sponsorship?
Well, also minutes before the show started, somebody said to me, "What do you think the people at Bellator are doing right now?" And this guy was making the claim that the people at Bellator were sending out press releases and sending out letters to fighters, and they're going to exploit what seems to be chaos. And I said, "You're crazy. The people at Bellator are sending out resumes."
People at Bellator are arguing about which one of Sumner Redstone's housekeepers is actually in charge of the company this week. That's
right. So I mean, the thing is, it's an ill wind that it doesn't blow somebody some good. I think that the new owners. Listen.
Now there's a massage therapist somewhere going, man, if I had known that wrinkly old fool wanted a happy ending, I would have done it.
Yeah. Well, I think that the new owners don't. I mean, right? The scrutiny. It's like being on Match.com. You go on a date, and you know what you do for that first date? Yeah, you wear a clean shirt. You might make plans to go to a nice hotel. If things work right. You're not screwing somebody in the van on the first date unless you are somebody like me.
So I thought your friend was about to make a third appearance on the show.
I couldn't go with the friend 3 times in a row. It would beg or belief. So these guys don't have to do much. The new owners don't have to do much. They have to show up with a clean shirt and maybe a reservation at a nice restaurant. I mean, you got guys like Donald Cerrone going. These guys clearly don't care. How much more money would you have to give Donald Cerrone to shut him up and to make him feel happy? I mean, the bald one is in this death match with these guys because of his upbringing, where he can't concede just because he's a guy who can't concede. You think it would really kill him to give these guys $5,000 more apiece? The argument he uses to justify not doing so is like, what kind of message would that send? I got 375 guys in the payroll. I'm going to give them all $5,000. That's not good business. That's crazy. So, in actual fact, they figured out that for every American to be happy, the base level salary that you have to make is $70,000. There's some social scientists figured this out. If you can give everybody,
where?
Hey man, I'm just telling you, this is the average. If you get $70,000, you will be. Most people, their problems will aggressively attenuate. You won't be, I'm not worried about stuff. So that's a cutoff. Less than that, you're probably worried about shit. You're not so happy. More than that, of course. More than that, you're complaining about those people. That was for you. Those people are lazy. Those people, so I think the bar for them to please people going into it is pretty low, at least for the first year. Right. If you're smart, you're making your plan for 2018 because that's when the reign of terror will begin.
Exactly. It's like they say in any kind of situation where there's a transition or at least an acknowledgement of guilt. Keep this in mind, viewers, please. If you're ever in a situation where something happens in your corporation or company and there is an apology or acknowledgement of past sins, it's not your opportunity to list the parade of horribles because you will then put yourself on a list to be terminated once the dust settles.
And also, that's another good point. Keep in mind, as part of this deal, as laid out by on that Facebook Live thing with the guy from Goldman Sachs, as part of this deal, the bald one is part of the deal, right? Now he's not a slave. He might agree. Okay, I will stay for 5 years to aid and abet in the transition. He doesn't have to do this. So this means after a year. What kind of bald one do you think you're going to get? He's in that benighted kind of Mike Tyson phase a year out. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? So at that point he's firing fools. He's slapping guys in the face cage side. He could do whatever he wants. I mean, unless he goes a Michael Jackson route and it aggressively affects the value of the company. He can do whatever, and he can really push the envelope, and if they don't like it, they can ask him to leave, and no harm, no foul. Thanks for my $400 million. See you later. I don't get the incentives. Big deal, But
so what do you think, King?
Well, they've got a lot of work to do and it's the reason that Zuffa is reportedly selling the company right now, because you got the antitrust lawsuit coming down the pipe. You've got the Muhammad Ali Act applied to MMA coming through Congress. You've already gotten into New York. You're done with that one. That's the win. You've got CTE and head injuries and the science of that coming down. So there's a lot of negatives here. And then, you have the sudden death of Kimbo Slice. It's a competitor, but it's relevant. And I think if that story starts getting more attention, people will start taking a look at the health care and the exams and the preventative care for fighters. So,
well, hold on. Are you saying that you think that Kimbo Slice died from a heart attack?
Well, that is what he died of. That's the official cause of death, right?
So he because of what? Because he's cutting weight, or why does a 42-year-old man?
You had a guy who was fighting and who was scheduled to fight, and in between two fights, just dropped.
Alexi sees where I'm going with this.
I'm just saying. That's all I'm saying is, I wonder if that guy was getting regular medical checkups, say before his fights, and I wonder what those medical checkups had to say. That's all. I'm just asking interesting questions, like the guy.
I wonder what kind of doctor. I wonder what kind of doctor he went to and what kind of medicine.
I don't know. I hope it wasn't the guy that was giving Alistair Overeem anti-inflammatories, from the big needle that said anti-inflammatories.
There you go. There you go.
So, one of the Texas' finest pain pill mill operators, allegedly. And also, I've got people asking me questions like, doing the math on, the alleged sale price and then the things that came out a few weeks ago about fighter pay. And it's like, wow, if Dana White gets that much money, that looks like more money than all the fighters in UFC history have ever made off the company. Wow, that's funny. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But
what would you do then if you were running if you were?
I say it's all happy talk, and it's also some talk of changing and improving. I would scrap the Reebok deal as soon as I possibly could.
Oh yeah.
I would do anything I could do to get more money going to the fighters and some appearances of change. Like the most obvious appearance of change would be getting rid of Dana. I don't think they can afford to do that. They need the consistency. And Dana, for as much as we bag on him, actually cares about the sport. Yep. He has the respect of a lot of the players in the sport. They might not like him, but they respect him or they fear him. And
he's a good man. That's what we're saying.
That's what we're saying.
Man,
Dana is the king for a reason. And
one of those checks clear.
It's critical to keep it, but I think that there's some other things to do. They need to do something dramatic to show that this is new ownership and we've changed and we're fixing these problems. I think getting rid of Reebok is the easiest, shortest road to do that. But
then in the future, when everyone complains, like, well, we got rid of Reebok.
Yeah. Tell us how much more money you're making off your sponsorship deals. That's what I would.
Oh, you want us to bring Reebok back? Is that what it is? Is that what you want
to? There's a great old movie with I think it's Victor Mature, and it tells a story of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Hedy Lamar's in that one.
Yeah, right. And Job, he goes off to Sodom and the Gomorrah, and his friends from the old village come to see him, and they go, a lot, you've changed. And Lot's sitting there, like literally, like in a fur coat, smoking a cigar. Goes, "What do you mean? I haven't changed. I haven't changed at all. I mean, this is, I think in this instance that if you're surprised at how much guys who drive the thing in Rolls Royces are making, you shouldn't be surprised. That those were not loners,
Man, and what?
That beach house in Malibu. That's not a rental. That's not an Airbnb spot that he's rolling around in.
See, when you were describing what happened in the movie, I was thinking about the famous Deion Sanders video. Must be the money. People said, Deion, over all these years you've changed. I have not changed, but my bank account has changed. My car has changed. My house has changed, but I have not changed.
My friends have changed, but I have not changed. Yeah.
So speaking of change. King, your MMA legend Fedor Emelianenko. After you won a questionable split decision victory over Fabio Maldonado. Last weekend, Bloody Elbows Kareem Zidane revealed 3 of the judges were selected by the Union of Russian MMA, which lists you as president. What PR moves do you make in wake of these news?
You book your next fight, man. I mean, Fedor don't need PR. He's the president of Fighters Union in Russia.
Fedor don't need PR.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you got Dana White singing your praises after a fight, which how often does that happen? And what's that tell you? That tells you that Fedor and the UFC are actually talking.
Yep.
That means Fedor can play off their bid against the bids in Russia, and may the most lavish bid win. I mean, if you're Fedor, you already won the fight. I'm not saying he did fix the fight, but when the fix works, don't fuck with it. That's what I'm saying. It ain't broke, man. Don't fix it.
Hey man, how come I'm the only one? Is there anybody? How come nobody is saying what to me seems to be the most obvious thing in the world?
Fedor really won the fight?
No. What? It's like no. What the fuck is Fedor doing here? What the fuck? Everybody acts like he didn't fucking retire. Didn't he retire?
And then he came back from retirement.
So he's like fucking Too Short, right? So I'm quitting. Jay-Z, I'm retiring. I mean, nobody notices this.
It was just a concept album, man. Get over it.
How come nobody's holding this guy?
That was the theme, the retirement theme of the tour, the album, the whole thing. It's a story.
And it's part of the greater conspiracy. Fedor comes out of retirement, takes a fight against a guy that has questionable punching power, comes on the brink of losing. No, he's a boxer, but in terms of knocking people out, comes on the brink of losing several times, squeaks by on a questionable decision. He's ripe for the plucking from the bald one. And then when he gets into the UFC, unleashes old school Fedor.
Well, you know what? We laugh about this, but you got to realize that's sort of a variation of what happened to us with Holly Holm. That was, and they've admitted as much, and that was a long con. Because I went back and watched. She looked terrible. Her debut fights. Nobody saw that happen. What happened with Ron? There was no connection. There's a different fighter completely. So, but they say they were laying in wait because every time you have a fight, you open the door. Yes. You want to open the door a little bit, or you open the door a lot. The key is to open the door as little as you have to. That's why guys who train martial arts, I'm not walking around the street with my purple belt. That's why I think it's so funny. You go to Well, no, they have these jiu-jitsu clothing sites where you can actually get a real belt the color of your belt, right? So I can get a belt to hold up my pants that's purple. I was like, who does this? Unless you're 12 years old, who the fuck does this?
Get you that for Father's Day?
I didn't get anything for Father's Day.
What? Oh, man, I won't tell you about my awesome Father's Day then.
Two of my kids were on a college tour, and the third one was up in Oregon, and they said, "Oh, Dad, we'll do it this next Sunday coming." I was like, "Whatever." That's just the kind of
they couldn't do a Skype thing or something. I mean,
no, they called. They all called or texted.
Texted.
Yeah, dear, and then in parentheses it said, "Father's name here."
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, speaking about fathers and family. At.You're Ayesha Curry, wife of current two-time NBA MVP Steph Curry. You tweeted and deleted a claim that the NBA was rigged for ratings and money. ESPN's Stephen A. Smith put you on blast, quote, "When you were out there tweeting and saying the things you were saying, you were putting your husband in a precarious position," end quote. As pointed out by If I Did viewer Omar, quote, "The Dolphins got rid of Brent Grimes because they couldn't stand his wife," end quote. Since your brand is all about your family, do you need to make amends, or should Steph pull a 21st century Tammy Wynette and stand by his woman?
You're asking me?
Yes.
Let me tell you. This is like, you remember the Joe Pesci thing from JFK with the floating hair piece? Man, this is a conspiracy. This is a mystery wrapped inside of an enigma, man. This is, I mean, let's go back to something. I was on this radio show on Sunday night called A Logical Contraption, and these guys were like, "Oh, the Warriors." They were so sad about the Warriors. I was like, "Are you guys fucking stupid? Are you stupid?"
Hey, my kid cried about the Warriors. Let's have some respect. He's
haven't you seen the long? Yeah, your kid, a kid, the long play. And they go, "What do you mean the long play?"
It's the first time we let him stay up to the end of the game. Now
I go,
know.
look, no. I said, we need people in Ohio happy. This is about November. This is not about now. The Warriors were already checked in the box. We are the plucky little, upstart team, the cute little kid, and then the whole thing. Ayesha said, I can see Steph saying, "Shush, baby, shush. You just told people who know the sun is hot and the water is wet. Shush. LeBron comes back, hated man after leaving. He comes back, promises, and they deliver, and the people in Ohio are happy. And people who are happy in Ohio, they're happy through fucking September. And if they're happy in September, set in stone where they're going to be in November. Unhappy in September, set in stone where they're going to be in November. Politics of resentment and
so for
anger.
who is this for? Is this to just keep the peace or to
break the presidential election? Is that what you're saying?
Not so much an elaborate plan. People think conspiracies are unlikely because they involve tons of people. Really? How many Koch brothers are there? Does 2 qualify as tons? No,
It doesn't even qualify as a conspiracy, actually.
And that's when I told people 2 weeks ago, I go, that the jungle is speaking and the machinery is in and Trump is dead, people laughed at me. And now it doesn't seem so crazy as he flounders and fumbles and stumbles, stuttering and muttering. The guy who's, great primary guy. He's like those guys who are great rolling around in the gym, and they fold when they get to competition, except they're not folding now, except there's nobody to focus on but him. He's got the weight of Russia on his freaking back. So I think that there was no, am I saying that the Warriors threw the game? I'm not saying that the Warriors threw the series. I am saying that,
the refs called the series in a certain way that favored the Cavs?
Yeah, I'm saying like what the Leonard Cohen song says, man. Everybody knows.
Hallelujah?
No, everybody knows.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
everybody knows.
So what do you know, King?
Well, I think that she probably will keep quiet about the conspiracy allegations of the fix. That was ill-timed and ill-thought-out, I would have to say. On the other hand, Brett Grimes wasn't a 2-time MVP. Steph Curry has a little more leverage than Brett Grimes, he was in the Pro Bowl 3-4 times, but was not Steph Curry. Steph Curry has major name ID penetration. Like my 8-year-old who'd never watched an NBA game in his life was talking about Steph Curry for months this year. Like there's buzz on the playground about Steph Curry. Yeah. And so she's got a little bit more flex, but it's also not her MVP jersey. It's his MVP jersey. So she's got to answer to him. And he presumably doesn't want this bullshit hassling his life. He's already had the championship stolen from him after a 3-1 start. And there was
Stole it from him, man.
Hey, choked, had it stolen, whatever. However he wants to look at
it. Neither. That's a nice Rolls Royce he got into to drive away from that the arena, right?
I don't know. Maybe.
So Eugene, your line is, "You're rich. Shut the fuck up."
No. My line is, "I'm rich. I'm shutting the fuck up."
I see. Well, I think once he knows that it was all part of an elaborate scheme to keep Ohio voting for Hillary and save us from fascist takeover, I think he'll feel much more comfortable about that. He can explain that to his wife. Maybe show her this video, and then she'll totally be cool. So,
see, what I loved that you did, Eugene, right there for a second, I think it's a little subliminal. I shouldn't expose this.
The secrets.
You just said, my message is, make me rich and I shut up.
Yes.
So that's like a little subliminal campaign. Guy, shut up. What can we do?
Yeah.
Corporate America, if you're listening, we're all available. We can be, our silence can be bought.
Don't be confused about this at all.
Well, one source of confusion. Eugene, your Australian Football League. According to BuzzFeed on Triple M's The Rub, 2 of your club presidents joked about drowning journalist Carol Wilson. Your response, worsening the situation by tweeting that you will not tolerate, quote, unacceptable levels of violence against women, end quote. Which seems to suggest that you will tolerate acceptable levels of violence against women. How do you mansplain your way out of this kerfuffle?
Talking to me? Talking to
Eugene.
Eugene. Talking to Eugene?
You know, you just can't, man. It's like, okay, last week or the week before we talked about the chick with the. I didn't realize that Mexicans could be smart, and you know, if what is the word gyre, Gyre, and I think William Blake would always talk about the gyre turning, and it was like this thing that looked like an hourglass, you know, and eventually the great cycles of history kind of upend themselves and things come around again. This is when he's talking about that beast slouching toward Jerusalem. I mean, these guys, you know, let's go back. Howard Cosell, Jimmy the Greek, these guys. The cant, the chatter is meaner and meaner spirited, but the time to axe TTA is much faster, and eventually we're gonna get beyond this shit. Now I know and you know that these guys were joking. Like I knew and understood that Jimmy the Greek and Howard Cosell didn't mean what they were accused of, but they had no backing. Why did they have no backing? Because the fucking companies that they put them on had exposure. Why they have exposure? Just like the Atlantic Monthly when they took their staff photo, or that chick recently from the Huffington Post when they took their staff photo, didn't really look at the optics before they looked at the optics. It's like, look around you. You can make jokes about drowning other folks if you got other folks there. You can't if you don't. It's that simple. You know, you can't be the Atlantic Monthly and have a shot from your press room and not a single Negro in it. Oh, you know, no Negro journalist, huh? Or the woman with the Huffington Post, you know, no dudes. You got no dudes. So this is a real solid news gathering enterprise. Come on, diversity is the name of the game, brother. You know.
What do you have to say, King?
Well, I'm going to throw a curveball out because Australia. Woo! Today, did you see the reports today? Veterans of the Australian military are alleging that they were raped and forced to rape other cadets during military training sessions in the Australian military. That supposedly this has been going on for decades, and has been a routine part of the Australian military apparatus.
Wait a minute. When you say rape,
they didn't go into the details beyond rape, but I tend to believe rape means rape. You know, I mean, it was on CNN.
So you mean like my sergeant calls me in his office and says, "Oh, could you hand me that pencil I dropped on the floor?" And then, ba-bing! And then it's like prison style.
It sounded more like Jimmy Savile came to visit from the BBC and they put on a show. So teenage recruits were raped by staff and forced to rape one another. As part of initiation practices in the military going back to 1960, a Royal Commission into Institutional Responses on Child Sex Abuse heard in a hearing yesterday. So that's...
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. It was in Western Australia, which anybody knows anything about Australia. Western Australia is the absolute asshole of Earth. Like, you cannot get more remote and further away from civilization and still be in civilization than Western Australia. So they put another dingo on the Barbie, as they say, or whatever it is. I don't know, but how do you get out of it? What's your PR answer for this one, smart guys?
if you're the Australian military,
that's right. Yeah,
I say you call a press conference.
Institution.
You call a press conference, one journalist at a time. Have the press conference be in your hotel room, preferably late at night. You know, and then you kind of explain that it was all just hijinks, if you know what I mean. No, I'm joking about something that's not really fucking something you can really joke about. But, you know, what Martin Amis said something that I always liked, which was, he goes, total control of another individual inevitably leads to torture. Right. And like I said when we talked 2 weeks ago about the Brock Turner thing and Greek life, that single-sex, you know, male living arrangements, this, you know, I mean, come on, let's not get crazy. This is not... It's not women recruits using strap-ons, raping other women. It's dudes dudes doing dudes for reasons that only make sense to dudes, and they've been doing it since the 60s. And I you know, how is it that these guys would just think this is part of this is just part of what happens here, man. It's hazing. I'm glad to be part of this group. We're all, but get the fuck out of here.
You're pretty in it, once you're in it, as they say. I mean,
hey, there's a white supremacy guy and a neo-Nazi in Germany who at one point tried to convince his followers that they were wasting their seed on women and it was weakening them, and so that they should really share their seed among each other. And all the neo-Nazis before, but what? and then there was a big schism where half of them decided, I'm not going for this man-on-man semen drinking as a way to strengthen my white supremacy bona fides. So no, I mean, there's nothing.
Weeded out the weaklings right there. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, how the fuck do you explain 50 years of rape? How do you do that?
I think you have to just go. I think the quick and simple thing that they have to do is you express concern and you do an investigation. I mean, outside of that,
I don't think I could even, in good conscience.
Initially, the initial steps are, because the question is, what kind of knowledge was there in place? What's going on? You bring in an external investigator and try to figure
everybody who graduated from that military institute participated over the course of the last 2 years, they might have to do some digging. Like, every single one of those dudes is going to be implicated and potentially a victim. How do you clear that up? I mean,
well, that's why you have to do an investigation first. I think you just don't. Again, don't get me wrong. I'm not doubting the veracity of the report. It's just that as an institution, when there are claims or allegations that are made, whether you're aware of them or not, an investigation has to take place. And so until you finish the investigation, because you have this whole notion of due process, as well. So, a newspaper reported that X, Y, and Z happened, and what did you do? Oh, yeah, we fired everybody.
Did you do it like a Joe Paterno-style investigation where you have one set of books for the investigation, then you have another set of books?
That's a good question. It really boils down to how committed the institution is to the truth and change. And the disappointing thing in a lot of situations is not every institution is interested in the truth, revealing the truth, and truthful change. Speaking of which, that brings us to...
Wait, somebody just actually texted me. This guy met Jill Biden, and there was this woman that I thought was insane and asked, I guess in a press conference or something, quote, will we fund abortions for women in the military that were raped, end quote. And then she went into detail about rape in the military. Surprise, surprise, rape in the military is about as common as push-ups in the military, not fun stuff. The text just came through.
Well, again, it's just, as an institution... Is there enough outrage? If there isn't any internally, is there enough external outrage? How is it internally? And then does the external outrage, cause a change?
The military in these situations is you're training people to kill people, and you're sending them out there to kill people. And when they get a little rapey, then you get all surprised. Like, well, I just sent him out there to disembowel those people. How dare he get his penis out? Bayonets only, fellas. Bayonets only. Like.
Well, have you seen that Dave Chappelle bit about male rape? That in Houston there was a serial rapist, but he said the twist was that he was raping men, and then so Chappelle does this whole thing about how the women have it made. If a woman gets raped, there's a rape hotline. He goes, but there might be a rape hotline for men. He wouldn't know about it, but that's a hard call for men to make. It's like you don't want to make the call. You show up late. Your wife says, where were you? He was like, I was out having sex with other women. Just leave me alone. So, I mean, that's 50 years in the military it happens because guys are like, well, man, I guess I just had a bad day. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation that have this almost happen to you, but my response, and not a friend's response, my response would be to almost murder the person. It's like, I don't know I didn't know what you thought would happen. But this is what's happened now. I'm trying to kill you,
So then if you're American Airlines, Eugene, reports surface that a child was molested for at least 30 minutes during one of your flights despite their parent paying additional fees for a service you offered in exchange for protecting minors. Can you restore your reputation by improving the program or abandoning it?
Well, you can't abandon the program now.
I don't think they're legally allowed to.
You can't. Yeah, you can actually take your dog on planes, and I don't mean little dogs. I know a woman who flies with a Great Dane. She's got to buy a seat for the Great Dane, but that Great Dane is in the fucking seat next to her when she flies. She gets the bulkhead seat, or the dog is in the floor or on the seat on the floor. So you buy your seat, you do whatever you want, but this program has got to stay. They're going to have to pay millions to this fucking family, and it was an employee retraining, but this was a systematic failure of colossal. As a father, it made me absolutely murderous, and thankfully now maybe in the shadow of this Brock Turner outrage, we will have some serious repercussions for this 28-year-old man who clearly was not right in his fucking head.
What do you think, Nate?
Well, I think it's a testament to just how shitty American Airlines customer service is on the regular that this happened. Like this is when you got a girl in the window seat, creepy dude sits down next to her. Supposedly the stewardess said, "Hey, there's plenty of other seats, dude. Do you want to sit somewhere else?" He's like, "No, I'm feeling real rapey over here. I'll just stay." Oh, okay, cool. You're feeling good. Y'all have fun. I mean, it's like, what the fuck? Like they
saw it. They saw what was happening.
Yeah, it wasn't until the girl, one of them noticed the girl was crying as she's pressed as far as she can, her little face against the window. It's like, yeah, I wanted to kill people too. This was so infuriating. And if you've flown recently, you know how they treat people like cattle on these flights. Right. And this is just an extension. This is what happens to cattle in the fucking cattle truck. Shit happens. Sorry, guys. We were busy in first class. There's only one stewardess on the plane anyway, and she's been working for 24 hours straight. Like, what's she supposed to do? I don't know.
You know what? Somebody asked a question recently on Quora, and they said, what was daily life like in Nazi Germany, right? You keep in mind that the Jewish population of Germany at any given point, I think in the 30s, was like 2 or 3%, right? It wasn't very big. So, it wasn't like the stuff that has gotten headlines since then, via movies like Schindler's List and so on, it was a cult, not to everybody. You notice if, hey, the Jews downstairs moved out. Oh, okay. They moved out across town too, and they moved out next door, and they moved out across the street. At some point you had to figure out something. But daily life on the streets, shit was pretty okay, right? Just walking around town, buying stuff. But why was it okay? It was okay because there was a reign of terror. You weren't sitting at home at dinner going, Hitler's nuts. Not unless you turn the radio up, because you would get a visit, And so what I'm proposing is that this stuff happens, a Brock Turner, or any single fraternity guy who did it last week. There's a guy, the football player at Vanderbilt, who drugged his girlfriend and had his buddies come in and run a train on her. If you were to suddenly institute the severest sanctions for this kind of behavior, by which I mean Eugene-style sanctions, stabbing them in the neck with butter knives, I guarantee you, look, crazy guys use their animal brains to think. When was the last time a crazy guy went into a police station to shoot it up? Nah, they go into a gay disco where probably nobody's going to have a shotgun. The animal brain works in strange ways. If the animal brain has posited that if I do this, that I'm going to get the severest, who knows? Somebody might get, I like that kind of terror,
Well, they also had reports in the past where they were saying...
A stirring endorsement of fascism, Eugene, thank you.
Well, they said, why do, the one fallacy that we have as human beings is we believe, especially with movies and books, the individual or individual. It's like, no, we're sheep. And what happens is, in all these situations of terror and horror where horrible things are happening to people, it's normalized behavior. So something happens... People look on the side, okay, what's going on? So it's like, oh, that's normal. That's what they get. Or, they're not humans. They're animals. They're like, really? And then everyone else is reinforcing that. And then
Have you ever seen the movie The Honeymoon Killers from the 70s? Came out the same year as Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's black and white, cheap horror exploitation movie, but it's fucking brilliant. And it's based on a true story about a couple, a guy and a woman. He was a gigolo, basically. He would run scams on women through Lonely Hearts Clubs. He ran the scam on this vicious 300-pound nurse, and she basically said, I know your game, sonny boy, and you're not getting rid of me this easy. You're not running with my money. and caught him writing letters to somebody else. We're going to meet your new whore girlfriend. And then they kill the new lady that he meets, and they do this repeatedly, where he'd have these correspondences. I'm a widower, you're a widow, I've got this much property, you've got that much property, what a beautiful union we could have. And there's this scary scene where there's this mom, and she's there with her children. She's married to this guy, and she's realized, oh my God, that's not his sister, and these people are going to try to kill me and my baby. I've got to get out of the house. And she's like, I'm just going on a little walk with the kid. You don't need to come, And they're like, oh, I think we should come. And everybody's trying desperately to pretend everything's normal. Yeah. Because she knows as soon as she breaks the fourth wall and is like, you guys are going to kill me, that they're going to kill her.
Yeah, it's like in real life, the woman who had a home invasion, and she called 911. She said, I'm kind of hungry. Anyone hungry? I'll order a pizza. And she calls 911, and they're like, 911. She's like, yes, I'd like to order 3 pepperoni pizzas. Like, this is 911. I know that. I'd like to order 3 pepperoni pizzas. And if you listen to the interaction, it's fascinating because she was just not breaking character, and eventually the 911 operator got it. And so anyway.
Yeah.
This was one of those good 911 operators.
Most of them would have been, whatever.
Yeah, right. Oh, prank. I got you.
Flavor Flav again? Yeah.
So speaking about operations, Eugene, you're Stanford University. In Touch reported that your school officials squashed plans of Stanford swim team members submitting letters to Judge Aaron Persky about their negative experiences with sex offender and teammate Brock Turner. Your associate vice president for university communications responded with a statement that, quote, as private individuals, our students can say what they wish to whom they wish, end quote. Despite this, In Touch insists via Insider, quote, the team has been instructed not to discuss Brock Turner publicly or to the media. However, the entire team completely supports the victim and wishes that Brock had gotten a much harsher sentence, end quote. Since the age-old PR response to campus rape, relying upon victims to drop out and suffer silently, is no longer a viable solution, how are you changing your PR playbook?
Man, there's a thing called messaging discipline, but and they were fast on it. As an alumni, I've been getting emails. They've been putting stuff at the top of their email blast where they're asking for money, they're addressing the community, they're trying to get ahead of the news story. But something like this, somebody, and it's true.
Sending mailers like, Eugene, somebody's going to get raped tomorrow unless you donate $500.
No, they're not doing that. But you know what?
You saved from
most people duck their alumni fundraising calls. I don't. When they call, I get on the phone and I listen to the whole spiel, and I say, I understand you, but you do realize my 4 years at Stanford were the worst of my life. And they're like, oh, well, don't you? I said, what? You want to encourage somebody else to go through the same mind-numbing, roasting misery? And then they're trying to get off the phone with me, and I won't have it. I'm saying,
let me finish.
Yeah, exactly. So they're trying to get, and you know that the girls' swim team is right. You know that's how it went down. It's messaging discipline. I mean, what do you think? This has not been happening since the 80s? But I mean, the idea is like, well, is it, we here and the rest of the world? I mean, this is where it's like the clerics, the papacy, the Catholic priests investigating themselves. It doesn't work, man. When you come face to face, I lied to a cop about my name. They arrested me on Stanford campus. Arrested me. Stanford campus for lying about my name when a guy was giving me
impersonating Abraham Lincoln. I believe that.
Yeah. That's what's so funny if you think about it, right? Something so obviously like a quote-unquote joke. Abraham Lincoln. It's not like you said, oh, my name is Lamar Johnson. And it's like, okay, that'll be fine. Wait a second.
Yeah. Well, I may have done both of those things.
Oh.
But I mean, in this instance, somebody's got to fucking die for this. Somebody's got to go down, and sadly, I mean, that's the only way. It's somebody, and somebody should go down.
What do you think, Nate?
Yeah, they're in a deep, dark hole here. I mean, bad things happened. Then apparently there was a bad cover-up on top of it. And so, they always say it's not the crime, it's the cover-up. In this case, it was the crime, and the cover-up is just a shitty cherry on top that gets it all over the university. I mean, Brock, as far as they were concerned, bad apple. bad.
Right.
Who knew this kid was such a bad, nothing we could have done. And,
outside of all the girls on the swim team.
Yeah, except that. Like, this urge to circle the wagons around athletes, I don't even know what to say. I mean, they're so smeared with feces at this point. I don't know that there's enough baby wipes in the world to clean them up. I mean, I don't know what you do at this point. Baylor University fired their chancellor, demoted him to professor, fired their football coach, although now the alumni are trying to bring the coach back. I don't know. I mean, Penn State apparently put Coach Joe to sleep. Just a tasteless joke there. But I don't know what you can do short of mass resignations. I don't know.
It depends on who you're trying to appeal to as well. Is it the alums? Because if it's to incoming students,
well,
as long as you give out acceptances and scholarships, you were like...
Every college applicant in the world and their parents is reading this. This is going to be in next year's U.S. News and World Report ratings of the campuses. Like, this is a serious problem. It's not like Stanford is Penn State or Florida State or Alabama or University of Oklahoma. It's not some football mill.
Right, that's what makes it so bizarre. Yeah.
This is supposed to be the Ivy League of the West Coast here, and you're supposed to have some expectations that your little girl is going to be reasonably safe, although, as we've seen in the Ivy League and all the prep schools, nobody's safe anywhere.
Well, the Columbia Mattress situation, remember that?
Exactly,
so it's like no matter what college you can go to, you can't say, oh, it's in the city. It's
Yeah, so...
that case is... That case got extremely strange when she did the performance piece where she reenacted her rape and then put it up on the internet, complete X-rated reenactment of the rape, and
it was strange before that.
Her defenders dropped off precipitously after that, but that was extremely strange. I mean, I like it as part of conceptual art, which is how she intended. She goes, what does it mean if you're watching it? What does it mean if you don't watch it? What does it mean if you watch it and it bothers you? What does it mean if you watch it and you enjoy it? I got you, but I don't need more porn in my life. So,
well, one thing that this is a perfect segue for in terms of what things mean in instruction and teaching and learning. This is our teachable moment. King Nate, you're Pittsburgh's WTAE-TV. You fired 21-time Emmy Award-winning anchorwoman Wendy Bell in March for a Facebook post that, quote, offended many viewers, end quote, and, quote, violated your company's journalism and ethics standards, end quote. On Monday, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette reported that Bell filed a lawsuit against you because she's white. Her attorney told the Gazette that Bell is seeking back pay, attorney's fees, punitive damages, and her old job back, and that should own her stations, quote, be permanently enjoined from discriminating or retaliating against her, end quote. Plus this tidbit. Her job prospects are, quote, complicated because WTAE management told her that it would enforce a non-compete clause in her contract through March 30th, 2017, end quote. Is it better PR to make a deal or have your day in court?
It depends. What are Trump's numbers in Pennsylvania at the moment, I think, might be
I like the way you're thinking.
I mean, we're living in this world where, like, Representative Steve King of Iowa can go on and try to block the Treasury Department from putting Harriet Tubman on a $20 bill because it's racist. Like, wow. So, and, I read the lady's remarks. She stepped in it. She said some stupid things, but fundamentally her point was she was kind of racially profiling perpetrators of black-on-black crime, which is a no-win bet for a white person. Like, there's no way to talk about the likely perpetrator of a black-on-black murder without saying some things that some people are going to take to be racist. So she should have just kept her mouth shut about the whole deal. Some of the shit she said was pretty racist, but her heart was generally one of sympathy, although that's always the angle that racist Republicans take. What about black-on-black crime? Every time a cop kills some black kid, well, what about all the black-on-black crime? And it's like, well, we call them criminals and we put them in jail. That's the thing. When cops kill people and get away with it, people are mad because they're cops and they got away with it. If cops are killing people in Chicago, and they are killing people in Chicago and they are getting away with it, then people will be mad. They're mad about the crime, the black-on-black crime. Everybody's mad about that, but we're also running treadmills of people into jail over this stuff. So I don't know. It's a nasty situation. The station, I think, did the right thing to distance themselves from her. They probably could have got by with suspending her and not firing her. Now they've got a lawsuit. I'm a weakling, white, liberal, guilt coward. I settle.
What do you do, Eugene?
Well, but also, you know, there's a thing where I don't know if the rest of the world tied into this. There was a guy who was robbing another guy at an ATM, right? And it could have, I could be getting parts of this wrong. The guy being robbed had stepped out of a cab and was going to the cash machine to get money from the cab. The cab driver's sitting there watching this whole thing. He goes, fuck it. He drives his car forward, pins the fucking robber against the wall, and then calls the cops, right? So the guy goes to jail. He's got 2 broken legs. He's back up in that court, civil suit, sues the cab driver for for whatever. You're the lawyer. You tell me what it was. Overkill, maybe. I don't know. So you know, and I don't remember the outcome of the case, but it may happen that, you know, it may happen that both things are okay. Yes, I am a criminal, but yes, I have recourse to civil remedies because now I can't fucking walk. Yes, I caused my own. You know, look, have you ever seen your package of spaghetti and you know what it says at the bottom in tiny print? Do not stick in your ear hole. What the fuck had to happen for them to put that on there? Somebody's like sitting there going, "Girl, no, I can't hear you."
It keeps breaking every time I stick it in my ear hole.
Right. So both of these things are okay. Yes, it's okay that they. Yes, it's okay that they fire her, and yes, it's okay that they sued, because in the end, it's guys that like Alexi that are getting rich off of it. And as long as I know rich guys, I'm all right. You know, I mean, lawyers are, and I mean, to me, you know, case law, this shit, it's like chess and checkers, man. It's great. There's this like Ukrainian or Russian couple that comes by here every day, and I watch their relationship. It's crumbling in front of my eyes. I wish I could turn the camera so you could see over the past
police statement. Oh,
yeah, right, yeah, over the past 2 months. So yeah, I mean, in this case, everybody's right.
Yeah, but you have to keep in mind. Here's the thing, though, in terms of
what do you do?
Sympathy for the attorneys. At the end of the day, attorneys, we are supposed to be the legal alter ego of our clients. Okay, and you have situations in which clients, individuals, decide to do a variety of things depending on emotions, depending on messaging. And so in a situation like this, where do they have a legal right to hold her to the non-compete that she agreed to when she signed the contract? A non-compete that might have been negotiated down to a year instead of 2, 3, 4, 5 years, right? So it's that thing, right? So she had a chance once she signed it in theory to negotiate. It's 20-time Emmy award-winning television person. Now you assume there's been some kind of negotiations in the contract at some point, right? But the other thing is, from the station's perspective, what kind of message is it? A function of messaging, and to whom? Are you sending a bad message to the overall community, the viewer community, by letting her go, or by teaching her a lesson? To current employees, what kind of messaging are you sending by letting her go from her non-compete? So it's like, okay, you have a non-compete, but if you threaten to sue us for racism, we're going to let you go, right? So these are the calculations. And then another thing is, when you let her go, where can she go? Can she go across the street in the same market and compete with your program, or does she have to go to a station outside of a 90-mile radius from your signal? So these are the calculations to take in consideration, and in defense of the attorneys, it's their job to guide and show different possibilities. Now you have some attorneys like, whatever you say, boss, I'm going to do. And then other situations like, look, yes, you can hold her to a non-compete, but let's think about what the impact is of it. And then, you know, it just really boils down to the kind of company we're dealing with, and what lessons they're looking to teach from how they treat her.
I also like the particulars of the case, and what she's saying is, okay, if I was anything other than a white person, it would have been a laugh, and we would have moved on, And because this came up with me before when I was doing that porn review site, and this woman told me her boyfriend had said that she should be wary of me because Eugene was an anti-Semite. I go, the fuck is he talking about, anti-Semite? I make fun of everybody. She goes, yeah, but traditionally only, Jews made fun of Jews, Italians made Italians, the Irish, blacks made blacks. You couldn't cross comedy. I go, unless you were Don Rickles. She goes, well, yeah, that's one. And I go, maybe you just got a point, So anyway.
It's like the Seinfeld thing about the guy who converts to Judaism for all the jokes.
Yeah, I like that. I remember that. Yeah.
It's true. I mean, you both have more latitude to speak on racial issues than I do.
You say that's what somebody was getting my tattoo. They're like, the only reason you got that is because you're a black guy. Whatever, man. Nobody's stopping you. Go out. Plenty of white guys got tattoos like
Test out that theory.
Lost Battalion. I'm sorry, we're rushing to finish Lost Battalion. Of course, Rory McDonald. See you later.
And on that note, thanks for joining us. Follow us on Twitter at Eugene S. Robinson, at Kid Nate, sorry, hasn't been changed yet. At Alexi Old. Please give us a thumbs up, Eugene.
Ding, ding, ding.
And leave comments on YouTube. Subscribe at MMANation.com on YouTube, MMA Nation on iTunes. Visit Bloody Elbow. Read Eugene at Ozzy.com. Be sure to check out all three of us on Amazon.com. And we'll be back next week for another edition of If I Did It. And we don't know what we're going to be talking about yet because the PR kerfuffles have yet to be made.